Well, Taylor, you always have a lot to say, and I enjoy your wisdom of things that you have to say. I think one of the things that really impressed me from you from the get-go. Now, granted, both of us are LDS,
Sure.
Latter-day Saints, and I think one of the things that you said from the very beginning is like, sometimes we just need to be more real.
Yeah.
People. I think people in general, but especially at church.
Absolutely.
That's where church is is really the hospital, right? For those that need that healing.
Yeah.
What do you do? You still feel that way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you go to the doctor, do you lie to the doctor about what's wrong with you? You go to the doctor to get better, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, some people do. So they,
Yeah.
to obtain illicit substances or whatever.
Yeah.
But the majority of the time, if you're going to the doctor, you're looking to get help. And I think that's the same with church.
Yeah.
At least in my experience is I'm going there to get the help I need. And why am I going to go there and fake it? So I try to be as real as I can. And I'm sure I come across as a little bit overbearing sometimes, but I just have to say what's on my mind and how I feel. Otherwise, I'm going to take that stuff home with me.
Yeah.
And, have to live with it and, struggling with a mental illness. And then, you're trying to go get some spiritual healing through whatever you do at church. It's like, I don't want to take this home with me this week. I've already had it with me, for too long.
Yeah.
And there's a saying that says our secrets die in the daylight. So if we can expose the secrets or talk about what's really going on in our lives.
Yeah.
And especially at church, because my experience says that there's a lot of people there that are just afraid to expose themselves and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Then, we stay sick. If we expose those vulnerabilities and those weaknesses we have, they end up becoming strengths at the end of the day. So,
right.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree with that. And I mean, that's the same with like AA, addiction recovery programs.
Yeah.
I like that, putting it in the light versus keeping it hidden. Right?
Absolutely, because what happens is we think the majority of the time we're the only person that struggles with something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only person that's dealing with this, and the reality is you start talking about those things, you get people that'll come out of the woodworks and say, I'm struggling with that same thing, and then you look at them, you're like, man, you're struggling with that? I thought you were like golden. I thought you were perfect, and it's like, no, I'm struggling with that too. And so it's actually a pretty cool way to build some pretty strong friendships and bonds and allows you to heal together,
Yeah.
So when you're going through those tough times, you pick up the phone and you say, hey, dude, I'm struggling with this today. And all of a sudden he's like, let me tell you what I did. So we get to use their experience to because a lot of times my best thinking got me into more trouble. It's true, you know?
Yeah.
Because we can't think our way out of it, we have to actually try other methods, and sometimes getting a different perspective on how to tackle a problem is exactly what you need.
Well, absolutely. I think you're exactly right. I think the idea of having someone that you can go to and talk to about it, and then also receive different viewpoints of how to tackle it or experiences, stories. I mean, you hear them, various stories. I mean, there's obviously media, movies, and stuff like that kind of talk about it. But at the same time, there's really not a whole lot of stuff in the movies or TV shows that really show people overcoming addictions.
Yeah.
Really, it's just more like, oh, he's an alcoholic, and that's why he killed someone, or he's an alcoholic, and that's why his family's falling apart. And they use it as part of. And I get it. You got to have a plot. You got to have you got to have character development and whatnot. But very, very rarely do they overcome it.
Right.
And if they do, it's a flash into the future, and now he's a multimillionaire.
Everything's better now.
Everything's better, and it's like, okay, cool. Like, well, how did he do it? What's the path? And I think that's the other thing too that I know I've heard you say several times is like, what's the real path of how people go through these hardships, and that's something that part of the reason why I started this podcast, because I love the idea of what's the path that people take to discover this, or to become healed, or to, psychologically and I mean, physically too. But
sure.
But it's not something that people just again, if you grow up watching TV or movies, you really don't see it.
No.
You don't see that process. And I think that's a hindrance that we have as well, is that we don't see that reality aspect. I mean, again, it's TV, it's movies. They're trying to show, character development, and you got to have this person that'll never overcome his challenges, because if he does, then this doesn't make sense for this character to do this.
Sure. Yeah.
But I would love to just sit in the room of like some of those writers that write these things and just be like, hey, why don't you put something that talks about the people that can overcome it, or even those that haven't but are trying, like truly trying.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you feel like keeps you going when those things? I mean, you talked about the mental illness that you have. Well, actually, how about this? What would you say is, if you don't mind sharing, is there a specific mental illness that you feel like you have, or?
Well, yeah, I'm pretty darn sure that I've got bipolar type 2.
Really?
Yeah.
Has it been diagnosed?
It has been.
Okay. So you're pretty sure means
but
yes.
It just barely got diagnosed.
Really?
Back in October of last year.
Wow.
So really interesting is I started to see a therapist.
Okay.
I think everybody should have one.
Absolutely.
That's
another sense of embarrassment.
I
right,
think people are like, oh, I've got to go see my therapist. And it's like, man, you have no idea. Therapy is the coolest thing. Yeah. And I'm in my own individual therapy. Me and my wife see a therapist for couples counseling. And, even some of my kids are seeing therapists. And you know what? It's actually made life in our home a little easier, and we don't get so upset, and we learn how to communicate. Communication, it's one of those important things in a family, and especially in a marriage. But I was diagnosed with bipolar type 2, and I still trying to fully accept that. But so for years and years and years, I thought that it was the addiction that was the main problem, where it was actually I had a mental illness. I had bipolar, and I was self-medicating, and addiction was actually just one of the symptoms of my bipolar.
Interesting.
And so, very crazy thing that the therapist walked me through to try and help me see it. Because at first I was really upset with her, and I just said, you're wrong. And she's like, well, we can look at that. And, good therapists are always so good to you because they'll validate you. And that's one of those huge things for me is I never got a lot of emotional validation growing up. I was the third child in a family of 4 kids. So I have 2 older brothers and a little sister. So we've got the baby of the family. She's the only girl, and she's beautiful, but she got a lot of the attention.
Yep.
So I was 4 years old when she came along. And my older brother, that's just older than me, he's a knucklehead, but he picked on me a lot. He teased me. And so I was just kind of, it's like the forgotten child, So, and there were some things in life that I didn't really understand, as far as like when you're little. I got sent to live with my grandparents when I was like 9 years old. They lived in the Kiribati Islands. It's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
Small little country. And as an 9-year-old, you don't really understand, like, why am I going? Mom and dad are saying this is for an experience, but we're not capable of processing that.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to deal with, my mom and I'm a problem for my parents. They want to get rid of me. I'm causing all these issues. And it couldn't have been further from the truth. The truth was they really were trying to give me a good experience and create a little bit of distance between me and my brother, because I was getting picked on him quite often, And so they were trying to find some solutions there. I mean, they didn't know what to do. They were just doing the best they could, with what they'd been given. So I went and lived with them, and then I was getting picked on out in the islands too by the Pacific Islanders. I was this blonde-haired, blue-eyed little kid, and I don't know I didn't think I was rude to them or anything, but I mean, in their culture, it's
You're weird.
you get and you get.
Is that what it is?
Well, listen, I wasn't used to the kind of corporal punishment that's given to them, like in school and stuff.
Oh.
Like you'd get the switch.
Oh, wow.
Like there's this one time I got accused of stealing this little girl's lunch. And I mean, I was literally it's like what you see on the movies. They take you up to the front of the room and I got switched.
Wow.
And I'd never been hit physically in my life, because my dad wasn't a spanker. He was gone a lot of the times working and stuff. So, it shook me. I mean, that's some of the trauma that I'm still working through.
Really?
So, I mean, that's 33 years ago.
Yeah.
So if we don't start to talk about some of these things early, and that's why some of my kids are in therapy now, because they need to learn how to talk about their feelings. Otherwise, they're going to stuff their feelings down, not talk about it. And sadly, that's why I think we see a lot of these suicides that are happening. These younger kids that are choosing to take their own lives, and it's devastating. Every time I hear about it, it just breaks my heart, because I'm thinking, what is so bad right now in life? Like, I can't imagine just exactly how this person is feeling. Like this human being that has value and worth is hurting. And that is literally their only solution, is to choose to just escape that pain. I mean, that's how painful it is for them. It's not that they want to die. It's just that it hurts so bad, and that's the only solution. And sadly, it's not like that's a permanent solution. It's not temporary.
Right.
So it's just, there's a lot of stuff. And that's why I'm an advocate for just talk about whatever's on your mind. And if people want to look at you weird and whatever, cool. I'm not here to make friends. I'm just here to be the best person I can be on a day-to-day basis. And some days I suck at being a human, and typically it's because I'm not in sync with God, or my spiritual self is just out of sync,
Yeah.
But when I'm on spiritually, man, I'm on, and it feels good. But there are days that still, I can live in selfishness and say, I'm not doing anybody else's will but my own. And, sadly, experience has taught that my will gets me into trouble. So anyway.
Would you say that on the days that you feel like that you're on track versus the days that you're not on track, do you feel when you're on track that you go, those days that I was not on track don't matter?
Yeah, you have to. You have to. At the end of the day, so with the 12 steps, we learn to take a daily inventory. What are the good things I did? What are the things that weren't so hot? And we discard the bad inventory. Like it's like if you owned a grocery store, you want to make sure your stuff is fresh and it's not expired, and the stuff that's expired you take off the shelf and you chuck it. And you start the next day with fresh, good food. Yep. And that's exactly how it is. If there's things that I recognize that were bad coping mechanisms or whatever, I have to just discard them and then start fresh. A day at a time is that big AA motto mantra thing. And you really do. Because otherwise you can start to build up, start living regret, and you start having these fears and all this stuff, and it just compounds, and you eventually you'll blow a gasket. And if you're not, that's why there's a lot of relapse, and alcoholics go, and after years and years of sobriety or whatever, if they haven't properly worked through some of these character defects or weaknesses that we have, that's why they return drink again. It's just it's not there's weakness, man. I something that really bothers me sometimes is people think that these alcoholics and these addicts and these people that struggle with mental illness are weak. I from my own experience, we're some of the strongest people that walk on the face of the earth, because we wake up and we do this. we walk through it every day.
Yep. That actually reminds me of a story. So I have not I've gone to an AA meeting twice, not necessarily for myself, although very beneficial. I mean, it's kind of like counseling. Like, everyone should go.
Yeah.
I mean, at least go
Sure.
once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, go with a friend, go with a family member, you know, support them, but also see how it is. And honestly, it opened up my eyes a lot both times that I've been. This last time I went about a year and a half ago, and it was on a business trip, and it was a big conference, big work conference. And my colleague that I was there, actually my boss at the time, I'll give you the whole story. He goes, I forget the name, but he's like, I mean, you have your itinerary, you know, where you're going, and each room has like a speaker, and it's like at night. It's like 7:00, and he goes, "Oh, I'm at the I think it's the founder of the AA. You know, I'm at the John Sutherland meeting." I don't know his name. I was like, man, I looked at the turn. I can't find anything. And it turns out for the conference, the company put an AA meeting in place of, instead of like going out like the big party night. You know, it's in Anaheim, so there's all that, you know, lots of places, so it's a safe place for these people to go. So I show up there and I'm like, where's this guy? You know, it's just my boss and this other gal or you know, another person. It, you know, showed up early, and it didn't dawn on me until later, as people come in and no one knows each other.
Yeah,
and we're all from all across the country, and some of them across the world actually, and we see, you know, like, people start talking, and one person's in charge right away, kind of saying, okay, well, not right away, but after people settle down, and it gets pretty full. It's a pretty big room, probably about 20 or more of us in there. And I all of a sudden realize, oh, this is an AA meeting. And I look at my boss, I'm like, oh, I mean, I had no problem being there. I just legitimately thought it was another meeting. But there was a gal at the other end of the table. It was a nice, long, skinny table. And there were people not at the table just because there were so many of us. But there was a gal, kitty corner of the table of me, just bawling. Just bawling. And this is the second night of the event, or of the conference. And everyone, you know, at least so far, I've only gone twice, but, you know, I think everyone has the opportunity to speak. And in this case, they let people call on each other. And so that way it wasn't like in a circle. Yeah. Someone called on her, and she just let it all out. She goes, I don't know how long, probably a year, a good amount of time. She goes, I drank last night. And, you know, the fact that she was there and could admit it, I think that takes a lot of strength.
Huge.
A lot of strength. And that's kind of how I wish church was. Yeah. You know, I mean, I don't think people need to necessarily be bawling during sermons or Sunday school, but I think it needs, you know, I think there needs to be that, you know what, Timmy's struggling. Yeah. You know, let's put our arms around him. That's really, I mean, elders quorum, you know, in the elders church. I mean, gosh, I mean, I this actually leads to another story of while I was at BYU, we had a guest speaker come in and talk about the effects of pornography, the addiction of pornography, but this guy, you know, did the 12-step program and overcame it. So now he about every Sunday he probably goes to a different ward and talks about it. And that's what I'm talking about. We need those stories. Right? Yeah, we need those stories in the movies and the TV shows, because that story was so unique. You don't get to hear that super often. And he talks about how there's the 12-step program and where you can go. Yeah. And a friend of mine in the back corner goes, I go to that one he's talking about. And the stake leader, you know, the leader over our congregation, the leader over our congregation's leader goes, now that's a man. Yeah. Wow. That's a man. That he could say that in front of his peers. I mean, college, at a religious college that that condemns, you know, pornography in a pretty strict way. Sure. That's pretty brave to do that. So yeah, I think people that can do what you've said definitely have a lot of guts. Yeah, well, let me bring up another story here for you that goes along right with that. Okay. I was sitting in an elders quorum one time, and we were getting the annual, it seems like it happens once a year, we get the annual don't look at porn Yep.
lesson.
Yep.
You know, the damaging effects of pornography, and you know, it's for me, it wasn't awkward. It wasn't really. It's like, cool, man. It's porn, man. Like, whatever. It's porn.
Yeah.
It's
natural.
naked women
naked women
doing things. Okay,
Yeah.
so, well, I had one of my good friends from that elders quorum start saying, you know, I'm struggling with this, you know, and I've struggled with it for a lot of years, and almost immediately we had a brother spout out, well, we don't talk about that here.
No.
And
Lost opportunity.
and I'm thinking, and so he starts to try and shut it down. And I turned around, and man, I was so hot and fired up. I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "If there's one place that this brother should feel safe talking about that is within this quorum, where you should all have his best interest."
Yeah.
And no, that should be reserved for his ecclesiastical leader, for the bishop. And you know, I
Sure,
said,
he should go talk to him,
"You're
but-
wrong, man. Like, the bishop, great, go confess
Yeah,
to him. But
go.
the way he's going to heal is through his peers,
Yep.
and finding out that there's probably, whether you want to admit it or not, a good handful of you that are also struggling with that same problem, and you could actually be a strength." I mean, it really was a lost opportunity for I think, for a lesson, but the lesson got derailed. It you know, the spirit left because it got pretty contentious, and you know, that was that. Well, you know, after the meeting and after church, you know, knock on the door, and this brother that had said we don't talk about this was there to apologize, and kudos to him for coming and saying, you know, I apologize for what I said.
Well, now he learned the lesson.
So maybe there was a reason that it had to happen that way. I don't know. But we got to just be okay with talking about, like, our struggles.